Let's go over everything, the entire kit and caboodle of Haki. This is going to be King of Lightning's Haki Lesson 101. Class is in session. However, if you don't have the prereqs, then you have to leave the room.
Wow!
Which means, if you are an anime-only watcher of One Piece, then your prereqs are not in place. You must leave the class. I still love you.
I still love you.
But this class is just too advanced for you. I apologize. Muchas gracias. I mean no disrespect. Now, I've done a lot of Haki videos over my tenure on YouTube, and I built my own structure on how to view Haki. In a way, what I try and do is take a structure of a more robust power system like Nen in Hunter x Hunter and apply it to Haki. This structure helps me orient myself on the need to knows about Haki. But the new things we've gotten about Conqueror's Haki and beyond have added more layers to my system. Now, you don't have to use my system. You definitely do not have to use my system. And I could just be flat out wrong. But I know a lot of folks have been asking for this video, so that's why this video exists. So I'm going to break everything down in a general sense with examples and why I do what I do for each Haki type. Now, before we get into the Kingu's Haki Class 101, if you want to get extra credit points, and you absolutely do want to get extra credit points for the next exam, be sure to rate the video, hint hint, thumbs up for even more extra credit, of course, subscribe to the channel, and hit on that bell to join the notification squad. And before we get started with the class, a brief word from today's video sponsor. Now, today's video sponsor is none other than the Surfshark VPN. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back.
Lovely.
You see, people understand what I do on the down low. It's just no surprise. I go to very dark and dangerous corners of the web. The One Punch Man cats they know full well. And I partake in this dangerous research for you guys, because I love you guys. But your boy needs protection going to these very dangerous waters. And Surfshark continuously, over and over and over and over and over again, has my back. With very dope features like the Clean Web feature, which does in fact remove a lot of malware and a lot of malice that goes on in these dark and dangerous parts of the web. Not only that, there are many applications of Surfshark VPN that are antivirus, that are search protections, that give you alerts on anything that may be going on with your own privacy and protections. It is great for hiding your identity no matter where you are in the world, especially if you're looking in the 5 eyes. That's a very important thing. You can hide your identity very well with IP changers. And then on top of that, if you want to gain access to any region-gated content that normally you can never get access to, you can easily do so with Surfshark VPN. I myself have videos that are region-gated. So there are some folks in certain countries that do not have access to my videos. But if you have Surfshark VPN, just like that, you will get access to everything. Now, Surfshark VPN is very affordable, especially when you compare to other VPN services. It is a lot more bang for your buck, without a doubt. And because it is outside the 5 eyes, it has a layer of protection that other VPNs just cannot offer you. But let me do you lads and ladies a service of the realm. You can go in the description box down below and use code COL, that is KOL, and you will get not only the first 3 months free, but also 83% off. Surfshark VPN does have very excellent plans, but if you use code COL, you are gonna get a steal guaranteed. Guaranteed! So once again, use code COL in the description box down below. Thank you to Surfshark VPN for being awesome. And on that note, let's get to the video topic at hand. With that all being said, let's get into the first chapter of the King of Lightning Haki textbook. Chapter 1, Color of Observation System. In general, I subdivide Observation Haki into 2 pools, 2 spheres of Haki, presence and precognition. Think of it like a classic chart with 2 circles that overlap. One is called presence and the other is called precognition. Presence observation Haki examples would be Rayleigh sensing all of the creatures on Ruskina, knowing how strong each creature was even in relation to Luffy. Kobe sensing the rage and the sadness around him during Marineford. Usopp seeing the aura of Luffy, Law, and Sugar on Dressrosa through walls, and so on and so forth. In general, sensing someone's presence in various ways that entails emotion, location, and so on, this is the presence sphere of observation Haki. The best in this field, I think, is NL, for the most part. He could sense the entire white sea in Skypiea, and in the series, was the first person to combine, knowingly, his Delphi powers and his Haki together. So not only could he sense where everyone was in the white sea, it also allowed him to even hear what they were saying across the entirety of the white sea. A truly godlike ability. The second sphere is precognition observation Haki. Examples would be Sunder Sonia reading Luffy's attacks on Amazon Lily, Luffy easily dodging the beefed up Porty Jones attacks on Fishman Island. I would argue Madame Shirley seeing the future with her crystal ball, her medium, which gave her a 100% accuracy rate, plus Hawkins' tarot cards as well, which do read the future to an extent, of course. And of course, my main man, Charlotte Katakuri, seeing the de facto future throughout the entirety of the whole Cake Island arc. In general, gaining insight on something that is going to happen before it happens. That is this sphere of precognition. Now, arguably, the best person for this is, in fact, Katakuri, where Katakuri, despite Luffy's haunting gains with the ability, to this day, has not done things that Katakuri has shown during Whole Cake Island. So, for example, Katakuri could hear the future. He knew what Jima was going to say before he said it distinctly, like it was JoJo's Part 2 Joseph Joestar. He knew what he was going to say before he even said it. But Luffy hasn't shown that ability just yet, to actually read into the future, hear the future, and know what someone's going to say before they say it. So again, arguably, the best person at this sphere of observation Haki is Katakuri. Now, an easy thing to deduce is something like future sight, seeing the genuine image of the future, is just advanced observation Haki. So there wouldn't be any need for two different spheres of this Haki. And that's a very fair point. It could be just that simple, where it's just the advanced version of it. Actually see images of the future. So this indicate more so that observation Haki is more like a ladder system rather than two separate spheres per se. The reason why I don't do that is because, number one, Rayleigh mentioned Luffy has an affinity for understanding people's and animals' emotions. This will indicate that people that are very good at using this skill, so NL, Fujitora, and so on, each of them have a unique affinity for what they're good at within observation Haki itself. Usopp could clearly see people's auras through walls. And we've never seen Luffy, Rayleigh, or Katakuri do something similar, and they are way better at that skill than Usopp is. And then looking at Katakuri himself again, Katakuri, who is the model for this quote advanced observation Haki, Rayleigh actually never, as far as I understand, showed the distinct ability to sense people in a similar fashion to Rayleigh or NL, despite him being that advanced. Luffy particularly is good at sensing people's emotions, but Katakuri never really showed that, again, despite him being that advanced with this Haki. Katakuri, for example, didn't sense Brûlé at all when she was messing around in the mirror world watching his fight, or even Flampe or the other fodder that were there when they were watching his fight against Luffy. With his level of observation Haki, that should easily be the case, but that didn't happen at all. And you can argue even too, before the Merienda, he could have sensed Luffy's voice, like heard Luffy's voice, and see if his voice was still active to mention that he was actually dead. Of course, though, nothing of the sort happened. But again, given his advanced observation Haki, this should be relatively easy to do. So, based on Katakuri, based on Rayleigh, based on Enel, based on Usopp, there is clearly a spectrum on what people are good and not good at when it comes to the observation Haki. And then finally, there is another way some people view the color of observation Haki types, where one is non-combat, i.e. presence, and the other one is combat-based, precognition. Personally, I don't do that because you can argue that Usopp seeing through walls is a combat-based thing. Like, it's for combat purposes, to snipe and save Luffy and Law from Sugar's abilities. Or, let's say, for example, in the middle of a fight, Big Mom, after the conquest of the sea, could sense the voice of Luffy and company after the attack, even though they couldn't see them. So he's seen people use presence in the midst of combat, yes. And then on the flip side, if Madame Shirley and Hawkins, them reading the future, is a spectrum of observation Haki, precognition, then that is absolutely non-combat based. So I know some folks do that, but I personally don't do that. I don't. So that is my general breakdown of observation Haki. Once again, you have two spheres, precognition and presence Haki, that overlap each other in a general sense, and you know the reason why I do what I do. Now, let's get into the next chapter for the King of Lightning Haki book, which is the color of Armored Haki system. In general, I divide Armored Haki into four different stages, and I call them as such: stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Think of it like a 4-layered pyramid, like a food pyramid. The bottom stage is 1 and the top stage is 4. It also does correspond in a way to the number of people that can utilize that stage of Haki, of Armored Haki. The more advanced the Armored Haki stage, the less people who can use it. Now, stage 1 is basic invisible Armored Haki that we've seen for a very long time now. Luffy, after the times of course, punching the Pacifista with the Gear Second Punch, duh. Peckham's punching Caribou in Fishman Island. This, we've seen it a lot. The invisible aura, the basic Armored Haki. Stage 2 is Armored Haki hardening. Whether it is bare-fisted, pull on weapon, or projectiles, we all know what it is, so no examples really needed. But it is important to note that stage 1 and stage 2 can get tricky sometimes because of the pre-time skip, where people never showed hardening, people like Whitebeard or Shanks and so on and so forth. Another big thing is shading. Because of Armored Haki's natural color, the black obviously, the shading sometimes of certain characters in the manga can be confused sometimes with Armored Haki hardening. A big example is Sanji, where Sanji, at the end of Holy Island against Daifuku, and also against Drake in Wano Country, his legs were shaded to where if you kind of zoomed in, maybe they could be hardened, but it really wasn't clear at all. And then also recently with Robin and her Demonio Fleur, her Demon Blooming, when she's completely shaded, some folks did believe that she was actually using Armored Haki hardening. So that has been, and probably will continue to be, an issue with Armored Haki hardening in the manga. Another issue is, of course, outside information that affects the story itself. An example, according to the Vivid cards, both Sasaki and Black Maria have observation and armament Haki. But in their fights against Frankie and Robin, we never saw any of them harden a single part of their body. Not a single time. So if they were in fact using armament Haki during their fight against Frankie and Robin, then maybe they were using the invisible aura, the basic level of armament Haki. So things do get tricky and arguably at times inconsistent, but that's just how things have been when it comes to stage 1 and stage 2. The basic invisible aura and then the actual hardening itself. Now, stage 3 Armored Haki is Ryo Haki, aka Armored Haki Admission. Specifically the version where the aura projects, knockbacks, and deflects like an invisible shield. We've seen Marigold of the Boa sisters do this against Luffy in Amazon Lily. We've seen Santomaru do this against Luffy himself as well on Shibuya Archipelago. He'll go himself in the Prisoner of Mines, and probably the Admirals doing Reforged War to block one of Whitebeard's shockwave attacks. Now, Yamato and Kaido might have displayed this in a new way to emit Armored Haki with their arrow attacks. So Yamato with the Narikabra arrow and Kaido with the Vajra arrow might be beams of Armored Haki, which would be another version of Armored Haki emissions. And I say might because it's still unclear as to what they are exactly. They could be shockwaves, not too sure. But at the same time, when we first see Yamato do it, we do see the black sparks around her club. And not the really thick kinds, for Conqueror Haki, you can argue. More so like the thinner black sparks. So arguably it would be a beam of Haki, which would again fall into stage 3 Armored Haki emissions. And then finally, stage 4 Armored Haki is advanced Ryo Haki, which is Armored Haki emissions that goes and does internal damage to an object or a person, bypassing natural defenses. Only 2 folks have shown this distinctly: Rayleigh when he destroys Kamei's collar, and Luffy, of course. However, I think that the Scabbards all know this stage as well, since it could damage Kaido, and Kaido was very confused about it. If Kaido knows stage 3, the Ryo Haki, and can emit his Haki in a beam with the Vajra arrow, but was confused as to how the Scabbards actually damage him, then this would be the reason why. All the Scabbards know this stage 4 Armored Haki, which is the Haki that can go and do internal damage, which Kaido at the time dubbed Oden's Haki, which is probably the Haki that Oden used during his fight against Kaido. Yes, the stage 4 advanced Ryo Haki that bypasses natural defense and does internal damage to objects and people. Now right here, very important detail. Each stage of Armored Haki has levels within the stage themselves, because of course, not all Armored Haki used are created equally. This mainly ties to the potency, the power of the Armored Haki users themselves, and or any other unique ways of using that stage of Armored Haki. An example, Rayleigh and Marigold both have stage 3 Armored Haki, but you can argue easily his stage 3 would overpower her stage 3 Armored Haki, because Rayleigh, arguably speaking, is just more powerful when it comes to Armored Haki than she is. So he's on a higher level than she. Or Yamato versus Marigold. Yamato is on a higher level than her because she could actually project her Haki in a beam with something like the Narukabra arrow. Marigold can't do that. And you would assume it's way more powerful than Marigold's shield. Now granted, these are all hypotheticals, of course, but the key example is Luffy versus Katakuri right after the Merienda. Both Luffy and Katakuri use stage 2 Armored Haki hardening while clashing fist, but Luffy was overpowered by the block Mochi. Katakuri clearly states that there are levels of Armored Haki higher than Luffy's. This is the main reason why I added the levels to each stage, because Katakuri's block edge Mochi could overwhelm Luffy's hardened Armored Haki. I've seen people theorize that Katakuri is actually imbuing his Armored Haki with Conqueror's Haki, because in chapter 1009, when Kaido hits Luffy after dodging Luffy's attack, his Red Hawk attack I think it was, Luffy's hands are hurting after he blocks Kaido's attack, in a very similar way to Luffy's hands hurting him after the block Mochi. The issue, of course, is that we don't see any giant Black Lightning streaks on Kaido's club indicating that Conqueror's Haki is being used for that attack. So that's why, ultimately speaking, for Katakuri's case, it's just a higher level of Armored Haki hardening. And then lastly, focus up.
Okay.
The levels of Armored Haki within each stage are not limited in power to that stage. Just because someone knows more advanced technique, a higher stage of Armored Haki, does not necessarily mean that they have more power with Armored Haki than someone who isn't as advanced. So someone with stage 2 Armored Haki hardening can overwhelm someone who knows stage 3 Emission Ryo Armored Haki or stage 4 Advanced Ryo Armored Haki emission that does internal damage if their hardening is on a high enough level. So, I promise you, Katakuri is blasting through Marigold Stage 3 Ryo with his block mochi. I promise you that's happening. Guaranteed. The same for Sentomaru. The same with the Scabbards. All the Scabbards. With the block mochi, Katakuri is blasting through them. But that's my own bias. And of course, hypothetical. The clearest example within the manga itself is chapter 837. When Cracker fought against Luffy while still in his biscuit body, Cracker was able to overwhelm Luffy's Hawk Gatling, which was a hardened Armored Haki Gatling, with his hard biscuits. Luffy was using stage 2 Armored Haki while there was no visible hardening on Cracker's hard biscuits. Therefore, stage 1 basic Haki. The basic Haki level of Cracker was powerful enough to overwhelm Luffy's hardening, stage 2 Armored Haki.
Look at this dude.
That is my full breakdown of Armored Haki. Once again, the pyramid, 4 stages. Stage 1, basic. Stage 2, hardening. Stage 3, admissions. And stage 4, admissions that does internal damage. And within each stage, there are levels of power because, of course, not all Armored Haki users are created equally, even if they have the same stage of Armored Haki prowess. Clearly. And now we turn the page to chapter 3 of the King Lightning Haki textbook. Color of the Conqueror System. This is actually the easiest one out of all of them, honestly. And it's fresh in a lot of our minds. In general, Conqueror's Haki has 3 functions. Number 1, mental domination. The ability to psych out people and animals. People can be knocked out completely, and animals can bend the knee like it's Game of Thrones. We all know what it is, mental domination. Number 2, the second function, is AoE, Conqueror's Haki. AoE meaning area of effect. The ability of Conqueror's Haki to affect an area simply by exerting it. A pressure that can affect matter and potentially energy itself. So examples, clearly, Shanks on Whitebeard's ship. The structure of the ship was buckling and breaking down under Shanks' willpower. In the anime, after the merienda, Katakuri's rage, that pressure, the teapot next to him erupts. The pressure of Katakuri's Conqueror's Haki via his rage. And then you could argue, when Ace first awakened Conqueror's Haki in the anime, we do see him suppress the fire around him. That is Conqueror's Haki AoE, area of effect. One of the interesting things about this function of Conqueror's Haki, the AoE function, is when you think about Big Mom and Kaido, and the reason why Law can move them in his room, that could be part of the reason. Where this natural function of Conqueror's Haki actually helps prevent Delphi powers from having an effect on a very strong Conqueror's Haki user. So that's, of course, a theory and it's unclear, but when you think about the possibility of this function suppressing, potentially controlling matter and energy, then maybe it could also suppress the abilities of the Delphi powers themselves. And then number 3, of course, fresh in our minds, infusion. So far, it is used to strengthen attack potency by infusing / stacking the Conqueror's Haki with attacks. Potentially strengthen the other types of Haki directly directly. So infusion, in theory, is not limited to just Armored Haki like we're seeing in latest chapters of One Piece. I did a video on True Conqueror's Haki recently. Check it out. There'll be a card here somewhere. Check it out. A very good video. I would personally argue a pretty damn good video. And shout outs to Jafar for that video as well. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Now, very important. Very important. The three functions of Conqueror's Haki do not have to be independent of one another, which is why they're not different types or stages. So you can exert AoE Conqueror's Haki while knocking out people. Again, Shanks, Whitebeard. We see as clear as day, exerting pressure on the ship and folks are getting knocked out. A very recent example is chapter 1026, when Kaido and Luffy clash with the infused Conqueror's Haki. The sky split because of the AoE pressure of the Conqueror's Haki, and a Mary nearby got knocked out. All three functions can happen simultaneously. Not that they will all the time, necessarily speaking, but they can, and they have. And that's it. That is it for the full Conqueror's Haki breakdown. Three functions: mental domination, AoE, and infusion. Boom. Now don't close your textbook just yet, because there is one last chapter. And this chapter is titled Oddballs. Think of like quantum realm stuff, quantum realm particles where things are getting very, very strange, very, very weird real quickly. The oddballs. And there are three oddball abilities that I'm still waiting on more information for. Hopefully at least, right? Each oddball does potentially tie in each Haki type. Potentially, of course. So I'll go in reverse order. Conqueror's Haki oddball. In chapter 836, Cracker was able to wither away the homies with what seemed like sheer killing intent / fear. Now, Luffy himself was confused if it was Conqueror's Haki or not, and it's not something we've seen before since. And in the anime, it looks like Cracker's actually emitting waves, like pulses, of whatever this is. Killing intent, fear, whatever it is. And the seducing woods continues to just crumble around him. So it could just be, yeah, they were all scared of Cracker and they withered away because of that reason. And even though there are other strong folks there, in front of them, they didn't wither away, potentially. And Big Mom, when she was there, they'd follow her orders, so fair enough. They're not gonna wither away per se. But it's still something that's relatively weird. So again, it could be a nothing burger, ultimately speaking, and they'll just, they're scared of Cracker, that's it. But if possible, I still want to get more insight on that. That's why it's there for Conqueror's Haki. Now the oddball for Armament Haki is the breath of all things. Because it seems to be tied, of course, directly to Armament Haki based on Hyogoro's words when he first showed Luffy Stage 3. As said by Hyogoro directly in chapter 939, a good katana will cut through steel when you want it to, and it will not break a sheet of paper if you do not wish it. And we all know, iconically, what Zoro did against Mr. One. Very iconic. You can attune your Armament Haki to the object you're trying to cut, and hopefully cut it, or hopefully don't cut it. It depends on what you want to do. The odd thing is, though, that Zoro could sense the nearby objects around him in that moment, and even knew which rock the sword was under. He also knew where to stand as the rocks were falling, because no rock would fall in that spot. The breath of all things seems to have a component of observation Haki in it. Honestly, a swordmaster attuning the frequency or the potency of their own Armament Haki to the object someone is trying to cut would require one to sense, feel, understand what they're trying to cut. So if it's iron, steel, Wappo metal, maybe Kairoseki, diamond, or let's say another person's Armament Haki or their own unique defenses, you would have to understand the breadth of whatever it is you're trying to cut. If the swordsman is unable to cut it with their own natural physical strength. That's what Zoro does against Mr. One, where in the final hour, he's able to actually hear the breathing, the breath of the steel that makes up Mr. One's body, which would require, I think, a degree of observation haki. Potentially, I'm not too sure, but that's what's an oddball. So, again, it mostly fits under the category of course, armored haki, but it may have a degree of observation haki tied to it as well. Maybe. And then, finally, the oddball for observation haki, which you would think would be the breath of all things in a way, which you can argue, yeah, but ultimately, it is, what is the voice of all things? That's what it comes down to. What is the voice of all things? The ability itself shares a lot of similarities with observation haki, and could be a very unique type of that haki where only a handful have it. However, when Luffy starts to talk and communicate telepathically, now I got questions. Particularly, even if this ability is haki related at all. What is the breath of all things? So because it shares so many similarities to observation haki, I'm going to put it in that camp. It is an oddball of that haki, but ultimately speaking, it could be a whole different thing. Who knows? So, that's it. Let's close our textbooks, and we're done. Class is done. This is how I personally structure haki in the series. Again, you don't have to do this. You really don't. This could all be just hot air. But it helps me out, personally helps me out structure what's going on with haki so far and what could be going down in the future. Because again, for me personally, haki is it's nowhere near as structured as I would like it to be. But it does help Oda, of course, move the story along, since it is that loose of a power system, I'd argue. Again, this would all be pointless, but folks want to know my system for haki, and now you know my system for haki. Let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. Be sure to rate the video, comment, and subscribe for continuous extra credit points. I'm going to catch you guys and gals on the flip side. Be easy, stay safe, have a nice one.